Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for joining in. I'm your host, Colin Lowenberg. Today, we have a very special Meet MobileCoin. We have Sara Drakeley and Henry Holtzman. Sara Drakeley is the Chief Technology Officer of MobileCoin, and Henry is the Chief Innovation Officer of MobileCoin. Hi, Sara. Hi, Henry.
Hey, Colin.
Hey, Colin. Good morning. Good morning, Henry.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for joining us on this lovely Wednesday morning. I hope that we dive into some really great technical conversation. I've really enjoyed working with you guys, and I'm going to hand it over to Sara to interview Henry and tell us a little bit more about what innovation is today. And we will be having an airdrop. So if you're sticking around about halfway through, we'll announce the airdrop code.
Great. Thank you, Colin.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Hi, Henry. I am so excited to get to ask you some questions today. And also to the audience, please feel free to ask questions and we will field them here as well. Henry, I actually met you early on, both when we were in completely different fields than what we are in now. And we met at CGRAPH, which was this conference that covers developments in computer graphics. And there was a product you were featuring there when you were leading innovation at Samsung. I want to take this jumping off point in two directions. One, I want to hear about your background. And second, I want to hear about that product specifically and why you were at CGRAPH. So first, let's jump into your background. Can you tell us about the path that led you to MobileCoin, starting with your journey? I believe you were one of the founding members of the MIT Media Lab, and then you're at Samsung leading innovation there. Tell us more about this.
Yeah. Hi. Good morning, Sara. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm glad to get a chance to chat with you and about one of my favorite topics, me. You stacked a lot up there.
I did.
I guess I'll go in chronological order. I would say that the very beginning of it, I'm going to go even back past, previous to the Media Lab, to being like a 12-year-old and being just like totally entranced with computers. And computers were nothing like what they are today, but this was just like such a cool thing to me. And I remember I read the manual for how to program in BASIC, but I had no access to a computer. So I would write programs and then pretend I was the computer to run the programs, so that I could have the experience of what it would be like to use a computer. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't long though before I found access to a computer and got to actually see how my programs work. But that was a great discipline because I used to be bored in class in junior high and high school, and I would write programs in my head and I would run them in my head to debug them. And then I would sit in front of the computer because I only had I was allowed an hour a week in front of the actual computer. And I got so much more done because I'd already written the programs before I ever got there. Fast forward, started getting jobs in computers when I was 16, writing software, started presenting at conferences when I was 17. So even before I got to MIT, which seemed like a preordained path. In fact, my aunt tells me I told her I was going to go to MIT when I was 12. I was just all about computing, just really excited about it. So I'm graduating MIT, and I am. I've had this internship experience, this multi-year internship experience at Motorola. That was really, really fun and exciting. I got to build hardware. I got to write the software for the hardware, but I didn't like the dynamics of working for this big company. I didn't like the hierarchy of it. And so I didn't want to go back. I had a job offer there. I didn't want to go back. I'm looking around. What do I do? And a friend tells me, hey, they're starting this brand new lab at MIT. I think it's right up your alley. It's going to be all about how computers change the future. And it's the MIT Media Lab. And so I go in for an interview. And so I couldn't quite call myself a founder, but I would call myself an employee number one, because the dozen or so people who were creating the lab were a team already, but nobody worked there yet. So I got in there. I got a super job. I reported directly to Nicholas Negroponte, who was the founder and director of the laboratory. My job was twofold. So the lab was started on this premise of we wanted to bring together arts and science, okay, because that would be a fertile ground. And so it went out looking for faculty that were very creative, artistically inclined nerds, and also faculty that were artists that wanted to understand how to bring more technology into their art. And they thought they would help each other. But even in those very early days, they realized that the really creative engineers didn't want to be told how to do their art, while the really technical artists actually did need some help. So my job was twofold. Help the artists figure out how to build their dreams, which was just really fun. And then be the IT guy, like build the computing center for the media lab. And so I reported directly to Nicholas, the director. And he was such a good, empowering boss. Like, he really set me on my career. I remember, like, I had a $1 million decision I wanted his advice on, okay, about stuff to buy to equip the lab. And so I went into the office and I said, here's my recommendation for what we should buy. And he's like, cool, why are you here? I'm like, well, I want your approval. And he said, why are you asking me? Don't you know, like, I don't know, 10, 100 times as much about what goes into making this decision than I do? I said, yeah, but this is a lot of money. And he's like, look, you go, you make decisions, you make things work. If you're making mistakes, I will tell you. In fact, in general, the world will tell you when you're making mistakes. You are not making mistakes. And it was just like this empowering moment to like a 23-year-old to just like do what you know is the right thing to do and count on the people around you for advice when you think they know more than you, and for like feedback when you're overstepping. And so I started on a career like that. And I ended up being sort of like one of the number 2 people at the Media Lab. Like, I was an associate director and chief knowledge officer by the time I decided to leave, with a good piece of the lab's research volume reporting to me, and a good piece of the lab's personnel as well. So it was a great career. It was a great place to be. I was there for like 28 years.
I'm actually realizing that we may have overlapped. When I was an undergraduate, I was doing an undergraduate research opportunity project with Ramesh Raskar in the camera culture group. Mm-hmm. And our project was taking an observation about video, that it is a sparse matrix, if you can represent it this way, in terms of if you compress video into a JPEG format, there's a lot of information and kind of this like low frequency, and then it gets really sparse later on because there's a lot of repeated information and pixels that are next to each other. So you can use this technique of compressed sensing to possibly extract higher resolution from a lower resolution video. Mm-hmm. It didn't work out that well when we were attempting it, but I think we did get a paper out of it. But yeah, can you describe some of the projects that happen at the Media Lab? Because I think there's such a breadth of really interesting things coming out of there.
Oh yeah, well, talk about my own things I worked on at the Media Lab. That was one of the reasons I stayed at the Media Lab so long, was because it was a place that believed in constantly reinventing yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, it was always about looking at what's next. And it was about looking about what's next for people. Mm. How does technology impact people's lives? Maybe, at times we were probably 20 years ahead of what was really going to be out there. Sometimes we were like, a couple months ahead. It depended on the moment and the thing, but it did demand you constantly reinvent yourself, which was great. I really enjoyed that. Speaking about what you're talking about, one of my early big successes at the Media Lab was working on digital video. Uh-huh. So the Media Lab as a whole was founded on this premise that the world was going to go digital. 1985, the world is not digital. There's computers, there's analog media, there's journalism. Uh-huh. Okay, and Nicholas said, you know what? Those are actually going to combine into one industry when everything is digital. And let's think about what that means and how that happens. And so I was working on making video digital. And I got involved with this group called the Motion Picture Experts Group, MPEG. There were about 12 people around a table, the first MPEG meeting I went to. And we set out this plan to get from analog video all the way to first replace VCRs. Okay, so not great quality, but digital. Then replace broadcast, make it better, even better broadcast. Then HDTV, then phones, video on phones. That was kind of the work plan, 4 phases. And if people always are wondering, like, what happened to MPEG-3? Because if you're a techie, you know there's an MPEG-1 and MPEG-2 and then an MPEG-4. What happened to MPEG-3? What happened to MPEG-3 was the HDTV one. And MPEG did this interesting process by which first we set the requirements. We said what we were trying to achieve for any of these phases. Then there was a competitive where everybody who had ideas did their best to meet those requirements. And we actually had both expert and non-expert viewers look at the results and rate them. Okay, and so then the final phase of each standard was collaborative. So now that we've picked what worked the best, maybe it's still missing stuff from what you did that you can figure out how to shoehorn back in terms of the thing. So the last phase was collaborative. So, okay, so MIT's entry into MPEG-1 didn't do well at all. I'll tell you that right off the bat. But what did do well ended up also winning MPEG-2. Okay? In fact, the top 3 entries were all based on MPEG-2 were based on MPEG-1. And so we hit the pause button and said, well, what happens if we try it for HDTV? Does it work? So it did. It worked really well for HDTV. So we just folded HDTV into MPEG-2 and canceled MPEG-3. Yeah. So MPEG was a great journey. I got to see the world because it met 4 times a year in different countries all around the world because it's an international process. In between, the U.S. contingent would meet somewhere in the U.S. So I got to see a bunch of the U.S. as well. It was a lot of work. Like we would just hole up in a hotel like in Rio for a solid week and not even see the beautiful sights or the sun. All getting together to work on this, but I can still tell you to this day, I can explain to you exactly how a picture is compressed and made to fit into a very tight package. So there was MPEG. I was really interested in human computer interaction. So I was always interested in like, how do we make computers work naturally? And that led me to doing some work that ended up being called IoT, Internet of Things, because there's kind of like, there's 2 visions for computing that are a push-pull. We swing back and forth. One vision is that you'll have all the computing you need on you. Okay, and so that's kind of like, this is doing really well at fulfilling that vision. The other vision for computing was ubiquitous computing. So computing is all in the environment. And wherever you go, you just have a smart environment. So that's like smart home, today. And so I got really involved in the ubiquitous side. I was really interested in how do we upgrade the environment. And so I did a lot of work in just like making smart environments through my time at MIT. I would even maybe take credit for having coined the phrase Internet of Things.
I have heard this story.
There are articles out there quoting me. I know the person who I'm not gonna call out by name at the moment, but as the person who is credited in Wikipedia with having coined it, I know for a fact had come to visit me, and the event he is telling about when he coined it is his trip report on his visit to see MIT and my work. So
Yes.
So that's kind of fun. I did a lot of work in displays as well.
Yes.
At MIT, like we really got into light fields. In fact, we got into light field sensing and light field display at one point. A student that was actually jointly advised by myself and Ramesh.
Yeah.
So this was a collaboration between Camera Culture and my group. Built a thing we called the 8D display. And the 8D display actually took full motion light fields in, full motion light fields out, which means basically, if you think about it, it would allow a holographic tunnel between two endpoints. So video telephony turned into video holography. Although the realization, we never built two of them. So the realization we had was you could see in the air a 3D, I know you can't see my hands, I'm gesticulating. You could see in the air, when you looked at it, you could see a 3D thing. You could like move around it and see around it and stuff. Take like a flashlight, you could like shine the light on it and its lighting would change. Like you could like illuminate it all around. And then in that idea of making interesting interfaces, we went even further and made it so we had a mode that was like the medical brain scan mode, where as you shine the light around, it would reveal what was under the skull at the point where the light was penetrating the skull, things like that. So that's like the kind of like trying to make really natural seeming interfaces that do really powerful things that aren't actually physically possible. That is the kind of work I enjoy doing the most.
That's really cool, because I think I had seen almost the Princess Leia display kind of result, but I love the idea of shining a light around and then seeing into the brain. Yeah. Well, and there's something that you said early on that's kind of echoed here too, around having really intuitive interfaces to data or to product, which is this when you were learning to program and you were having empathy for the computer, and this is how the computer will think through this. There's this great quote that I'm going to butcher, so everyone forgive me. But there's this great quote by a race car driver that's along the lines of, "You don't have to be an engineer to drive a race car and to drive it well, but you do have to have empathy for the machine." And I like that a lot. And I think that is also something that's changing now. When I look at young kids interacting with devices, it is almost like they gain so much more intuition than I had as a child for how to interact with machines. And so that's an interesting trend that I'd love to pick your brain on too, of how do you think about a user who needs to interact with machines in so many different ways and making an intuitive interface for them?
Yeah, that's a great topic. I think we are not going to have time for it.
Okay,
we may touch on it here and there, but
one topic, slightly maybe one step back for that, is if we go back to IoT and your work there, and work on screens and work on smart home, that ends up driving you to your next kind of your career that I'd love to get into. So you ended up going to Samsung to lead an innovation team there. Is that right?
Yeah, great transition. I was going to try and make it myself right now. So anyway, So in those days at MIT, it's like the 2011-ish to 2013-ish era. One of my main focus areas had become consumer electronics. And it was about taking these ideas about making intuitive interfaces and bringing them to consumer electronics to like try and, that VCR that was flashing 12 all the time. Like, why is that still happening? Which it was in those days. And so wrote a white paper, we called it CE 2.0, where we formulated like the 6 principles for the future of consumer electronics that were natural and easy for people to use. And it caught some attention. And I started having very tight relationships with all the consumer electronics companies that were participating in the Media Lab, because the Media Lab is a industry-funded laboratory for the most part. So Samsung was one of the big funders, and I got to know a lot of people at Samsung pretty well. And then one of my former students came by to tell me that he'd gotten himself in trouble. He was at Samsung. He'd been at Samsung for a couple of years. He'd gotten himself in trouble because he had been like talking about how Samsung did some good innovation, but they could do it even better if they understood how the Media Lab did innovation. And so he didn't know it, but the president of the division he worked for was in the room and actually right behind him and heard everything he said, and like tapped him on the shoulder and said, "I heard what you were saying. It's very interesting. Why don't you come to South Korea in 2 weeks and make a presentation and show us how we should be doing innovation?" And so he was in my office a couple days later, asking for help, making his presentation. about how ideas about how Media Lab did things could be translated into how Samsung could do things. And he did an amazing job building this presentation, goes to South Korea, gets the thumbs up, build a new lab. And then his question was, okay, well, who's going to run this lab? And he slow pitched me a little bit. He was like, would you be an advisor? I was like, yeah, I'll be an advisor. That sounds like a lot of fun. I'd like to do that. And he was like, would you consider like maybe doing it 1 day a week? And I was like, oh, yeah, I could probably do it one day a week. And he was like, well, maybe you'd like to take like a sabbatical and come and actually do it full time for a while. Or maybe you just like to join Samsung. So anyway, in the end, I joined Samsung to do this. And it was great because at MIT, I had a large role in like managing $10 million worth of research funds out to at least 10 faculty members, right? But at Samsung, they gave me $10 million just to spend on my own research group and work on product innovation. And so our mandate at the beginning was an observation that what it was to be a television was, first of all, increasingly confusing, and second of all, decreasingly relevant. And that the ways Samsung tended to compete in the television business was on quality of image kinds of things, and a little bit on usability as well. But that what was the future of displays in the home, like big displays in the home? That's what I was supposed to think about with my group. And so we set about like a set of projects to sort of try to uncover what would big displays be in the home. They probably would show things like they'd replace your TV, but let's not think about them from the start as your TV, you know? And so from that came what you alluded to at the very beginning, which is a new line of TVs from Samsung that they call Frame. And the big thing about the Frame is that it sits on your wall and it is very convincingly a picture on your wall, whether it's a painting or a photograph or whatever. But that's its off mode. When it's on, it's your television. And it actually has been very successful in the market. I want to say, you know, I'm very, very proud of the contribution that I made, that my group made, but that was a project that went through like 4-ish years before it actually hit the market. And, you know, it represented work of probably hundreds of people at Samsung to actually bring that to fruition. So it is one of the, I think, the crowning achievements of my time at Samsung, but it's not mine.
Okay.
If you know what I mean, it's like everything that happens at a company like that is like, you know, it takes a lot of specialists and a lot of generalists and a lot of executives to like get something like that to move. But yeah, I really love the Frame, and that came. So if we get to that process of innovation, let's talk for like just a minute about innovation. Like I think innovation is used a lot. The word is used a lot, and it's often used interchangeably with invention, right? And that's because both have to do with making something new. Okay, but I think innovation also has some really important characteristics of understanding that it's needed by people, that it's about human behavior. Okay, so I think when we talk about something being an innovation, we're talking about something that changes people's lives, you know, for the better. And then there's also this element about innovation that it's like what we call viable, that you can figure out how to make a product out of it, how to make a business out of it, how to make it sustainable. Whereas an invention often doesn't do either of those things.
Yeah, you can just patent it. It's
an
invention.
advancement in science or technology. It can be very important, but it may not be practical. Yeah. And it may not be something anybody realizes changing their lives.
Yeah.
You know? So the observation that the Frame grew from started with doing some ethnographics, going into people's homes, taking a look. Where do they have displays? Where do they not have displays? Where is their television? How do they feel about their television? Let's talk to them about their television, you know, kind of stuff. And when it came down to is we found that there was kind of like a bimodal thing going on where there were people who were really proud of their TV. They tended to have the latest TV. And this is why, do you remember the trend to curved TVs?
Yeah.
Those were the people that Samsung was targeting when it made the curved TVs. Okay, these are the people who want everybody who comes to their house to see that they have the latest, greatest thing and want to be them because of that. It's a status symbol. Okay? But the other modality is people who were trying to hide their TVs, who when they talked about their TVs, they were embarrassed about their TVs. Either because when your TV is off, it's kind of ugly, right? I used to call it, when I made the pitch about this, making this new picture TV, my pitch was, when a TV is off, it's a big black hole. It's like super ugly. It takes up valuable, what could be beautiful wall space and replaces it with a dark thing, right? And so the pitch became, we want to take the television and transform it from being an appliance, and an ugly appliance at that, a distracting appliance, and turn it into decor, turn it into art. And so that is like the kernel there of the innovation, is this realization that there was a market, there were people who were trying to figure out how to hide their TVs, who even when they weren't, were embarrassed by their TVs, and there's an opportunity for them. There's a need. And that we could do some really smart technical work. And we figured out ways to do it very affordably. And so there was desirability, there was feasibility, and there was viability. And when you find, like in that Venn diagram, something at the center there, that's innovation.
I have chills, to be honest. That is, I love that. And so those are three very different vectors to measure. And I'm curious what methods you have found in measuring viability that give you kind of the highest signal to noise ratio.
Yeah. So the viability piece is maybe in some ways the most speculative, right? Because what is affordable today or not affordable today can be affordable later. Maybe if you're building one of something, it's ridiculously expensive. But if you're building 1 million of them, then each one is at a reasonable price, right? So you do all kinds of like market analysis. You say, what is the total addressable market? Okay, and then you say, okay, but of that total addressable market, how many of the people will actually be interested in this offering? Okay, well, how many people will be able to afford it? Okay, well, you keep getting that down, and then you try and say, okay, well, for a start, here's a number of people that we think might buy our product if it was at this price point. Can we make it at that price point? Okay, so now you flip to the feasibility question. So now you start asking, well, what will it cost to make this thing? Right? And then sometimes you find that no, you're not going to make money for that many people at that price point. But then you say, well, you know what? Can I actually shave corners? Can I make this thing not be as nice as I hope, but actually get it to a price point where I think enough people will buy it? And if the answer is yes, then you've got a kernel to start building it up, back out again, right? And this is a concept that often goes by the name of disruptive innovation. Okay? The frame was anything but disruptive innovation, I will say, though. It came in at a high price point. It was what they call more sustained innovation, go after the cream of the crop customers. But we see all this disruptive innovation happening is when you figure out how to bring something that has a clearly demonstrated need to a market that couldn't afford it by figuring out how to make it cheaper, because maybe you've got some innovation in process, you've got some innovation in business model, you've got some innovation in there that lets you know that you can have an inferior product to what everybody wants compared to what's in the market. But by doing it that way, you can bring it to many people who are currently underserved. And then you can continue to turn the crank, make the product better and better and better, grow your market, until you actually push out everybody else.
Oh, yes.
And, the examples of this that we've seen, I think, in the last decade that have been really good at are things like Uber, things like Airbnb, where we see things like that, where they figured out how to do something that made things affordable to people who couldn't afford them before, like going and visiting friends. Like, Airbnb started with couch surfing. Make the product better and better as you build out the system, and eventually you find you've eaten the market from the bottom.
Hello, Colin.
Hi, guys. I'm really glad. I actually really love the Samsung Smart TVs. I made my sister get one. And I think I've also seen a lot of people like using projectors in really interesting ways. And it's interesting to see how technology has evolved to eliminate the entire product, right? And make things invisible. And I hope that we make the whole payment process really simple and easy. And so I'll give the plug for MobileCoin today. I'd like to give everyone a free gift. So we'll be giving out a small airdrop to everyone that's joined into this call. Just go to mobilecoin.money on your smartphone, Android or iOS, using you'll see a message on Signal button. If you don't have Signal Messenger installed, please install Signal Messenger. Once you have Signal Messenger installed, you'll also want to activate payments. Inside Signal Messenger, you click Profile, Settings, go to Payments, and activate payments. It's a relatively quick process, and once you've done that, you'll be able to get the airdrop. Today's secret password is innovation, and I think you should be able to have no problem messaging that bot. If you do have any problems, you can join our Discord at mobilecoin.chat or comment in the comments. Also, I'd like to say thank you to Henry, our Chief Innovation Officer, for talking today, and Sarah, our Chief Technology Officer. If you guys have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments, and I'll put them on screen so that they can answer your questions. All right, back to you, Sarah and Henry.
Thanks, Colin. And yeah, I'm loving all the comments. We have them streaming, so keep the love coming. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments thread in the StreamYard. So I think that's also a perfect segue, Henry, because so now you are Chief Innovation Officer at MobileCoin. And I'd love to hear how you're helping drive innovation at MobileCoin in this entirely innovative space of cryptocurrency and in kind of our innovative approach to solving payments using cryptocurrency. And all of the ways, I think one of the most exciting things about being in this space are all of the directions that you could possibly innovate in. And then how do you pick the ones that are going to be viable? And so, yeah, how are you approaching innovation at MobileCoin?
Yeah. Okay. Big topic, huh?
Yes, big topic.
If I can gather some thoughts around. Well, first of all, I have these memories going back to MIT of when DigiCash came out, and how excited we were about this idea of something that was going to replace cash, and it was going to replace it with electronic cash. So, it didn't matter how far apart we were, we could still send it to each other, and it was going to be totally private. It was going to let me pay somebody, and the only people who knew that was happening was me and them. And we even went so far as to rethink through how the whole commerce chain would work. So in our minds, no longer did you have to tell that online merchant about your bank account, your money situation. You didn't even have to tell them maybe about where you lived. That through cryptography, you could just be an anonymous purchaser to them. You could give them a packet that when they handed it to the fulfillment service was enough instructions to get that thing to you, and you could hand them a packet that was your payment, and they knew they'd gotten paid. Okay, and so your relationship with the merchant was one of they had a good, you wanted the good, but not one that was you had, you were the product because they were collecting data about you.
Exactly.
Okay, and same with the the delivery service. They would have no idea what it was you bought. They would have no idea how much you paid for it. They would just know they had this package they needed to deliver to you. So we were really excited about this. And of course it didn't happen, at least not then. But it's happening now. And what really excites me about MobileCoin is that in the 20 or 30 years that money really did fundamentally go digital, in the sense that it's numbers and databases. For the most part, it's only first now with cryptography really hitting its stride, where we can truly innovate the underlying systems that move the money around, that we can truly innovate what it means to have a wallet, for the money to be yours. Okay. And, there's been a lot of work that have gone on by cryptocurrency work before us. A lot of great work, but it was just the beginning. It has flaws too. It has the reasons why it hasn't had product market fit, which is, one of the things we talk about a lot, is because it has significant bits of friction for the mass customer. And so what I see as exciting at MobileCoin is to take that desire I've had through my career of just making it work the way people think it ought to work, and thinking about how we can apply all of the amazing innovative technology breakthroughs we've had at MobileCoin, combine that with figuring out what the next set need to be, as well as with our great designers and our engineers and our product people around how to build a user experience that's just going to be natural and intuitive to use. And I really think that MobileCoin is sitting on the shoulders of its foundation work in really figuring out how to bust through a bunch of those points of friction at once. It's fast, right? Transactions are inexpensive. They work on mobile devices. They're end-to-end encrypted. That set of things is no small feat, but it actually is just the beginning, because now we have to figure out how to build the products on top of it that are natural, intuitive, and just feel like money. I think that's my goal, is how do we make this just feel like money? And then how do we use that to democratize access to money? How do we help the unbanked, the underbanked? How do we help people build wealth? I think those are all things that I'm really excited to figure out how to innovate on.
Yeah. And when you're thinking about some of the projects currently underway in these directions, what are you most excited about right now?
Well, one of the things that I am personally working on, I am very excited about, which is so right now the MobileCoin blockchain has MOB. That's our introductory token, our introductory cryptocurrency. But what we've been working on is allowing the MobileCoin blockchain to natively support too many numbers of tokens that I can't even say the number. It's more than there are atoms in the universe, I think, or something. So we're going to become a multi-token blockchain. At least that's our plan. And that means that we can offer people different kinds of money that will feel right to them. Maybe you're in the US or part of the US economy, and so you'd like your money to really feel like it is dollars. Maybe you're very international, and so actually you like MOB better. But maybe you'd actually like, fast Bitcoin, fast end-to-end encrypted, inexpensive to transact Bitcoin. So right now, Bitcoin is wrapped on Ethereum. What if Bitcoin was wrapped also on the MobileCoin blockchain? Mm-hmm. Or maybe you're in Europe and you want to think about your money as euros. So we're going to be able to do all that.
Mm-hmm. And we have a question from Sanavan of, do you think MobileCoin is an innovation against Bitcoin? And what's the relationship between MOB and other crypto and USD, which I think you were just starting to get into?
Those are all the things I think I was just trying to address.
Yeah.
So, we've got a lot of work to do to get there still, but we're working hard at it. So Bitcoin, is there a timeline? Savannah's followed up with the question, is there a timeline? What can we say about our timeline, Sarah? as CTO. I don't want to over-promise and under-deliver here.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, our timeline is, this is one of our top priorities. And the way that our blockchain evolves is that we have these enclaves as part of the process. And so we sign the enclaves, and then due to some integrations with clients, we also want to make sure that the clients always know what the enclave measurement is that's coming. So there's the development timeline, and then there's the deployment timeline. And I think we have a little bit more clarity on the development timeline, and it gets fuzzier the longer you go out. And then we have the deployment timeline after that. We're also going to be working on audits, because these are core changes to the blockchain technology. So we want to make sure that it's audited. I know that's a vague answer, nothing definite yet, just to say that it is our priority. I don't know if you'd want to add anything, Henry.
Yeah, I'll add a couple things.
Yes.
One, I want to say that one of the cool innovations, and this was done by a couple of our engineers, of our multi-token blockchain, is that it includes our encryption philosophy. Like right now on the MobileCoin blockchain, we're end-to-end encrypted. You don't know, if you just look at our blockchain, you can't tell who the transactions go between or how much they're for. Okay? You're also, the way we've done our multi-token, can't tell what token is active in that transfer. So we call confidential tokens. We think it's really cool. The way we do our development, we do it out in the open, actually. So already in our GitHub, you can read about the confidential tokens. We have things called MCIPs, MKIPs, Mobile Coin Improvement Protocol. It's described in an MKIP. We haven't quite finished the suite of MKIPs around this change of the other facets of it, but there are a couple more there that'd be interesting to look at. Number two, in our GitHub is already most of the code for the multi-asset blockchain. So we are talking now, as Sarah said, about auditing, about testing, about a deployment timescale. So we're doing good. We can't promise a date, but it's moving. And if you want to watch our GitHub, you'll watch it move.
Great. And I'm trying to think the easiest way to find your way to our GitHub. I was going to drop it in the chat, but maybe I can guide you to the developer portal, which I believe has a section on MKIPs, which is the mobile coin improvement proposals. And so developers.mobilecoin.com, and then navigating through there to the MKIP section that will take you to the GitHub. And if you are in any of our communities as well, thank you, Colin, for putting that on the screen. So that's our developer portal. And we can also post this. We have a Signal group. We're on Reddit. We have a Discord. And so if you join any of these communities, we can also help you find your way to this documentation in the GitHub so you can follow along.
Yeah. I would say we're talking about time periods here. They're multi-month time periods, but not years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we are about to come up on time. Henry, is there anything you would want to make sure that listeners can take away thinking about innovation in general or innovation at MobileCoin?
Great question. I think I'm going to just say that I think that for me, the most exciting innovations are really ones that are enabled by technology, that are informed by psychology, like understanding people, and that are joined by entrepreneurial spirit to figure out that piece of how to actually bring it to the world.
Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you guys for a wonderful Meet MobileCoin. I appreciate your time. And this will be on YouTube for a short period of time, at least. So if you want to watch it, I encourage you to watch it right away. And we'll probably post some clips as well the future. So thank you, Sarah, for leading the conversation, and thank you, Henry, for telling us all about innovation.
Yeah, thank you so much for Colin for hosting me, inviting me on the show. And Sarah, it's been a pleasure nerding out with you. I hope we get to do it again soon.
Ditto. Yeah, thank you, Colin and Henry.